keep your camera off. We completely understand. So welcome to the international event of the ENCORE project. And today with me, I have that's a co-host with me and moderate both from the EADTU, the European Association of Distance Teaching University, as well the coordinator of the ENCORE project, Filippo Chiarello. We will have the speaker that you might have already spotted in the participation group here. So we have Manuel, we have Gualtiero, and last but not least, Bomica. So I'll give the floor first to Filippo to introduce the project, because I told you it's an ENCORE event, and you might wonder what is ENCORE. So to answer to that, Filippo will clarify, and then we go on from there. Go, Filippo.
Many thanks, Alessandra, and good morning to all of you. I see many people this morning. We will have a couple of hours together with some colleagues that orbitate around the project ENCORE. But before that, just a couple of words about ENCORE. ENCORE is an acronym that stands for Enriching Circular Use of OER for Education. And what we are doing in this Erasmus Plus project that now is at the half of the 3 years of the duration is understanding how it's possible to reuse open educational sources that are online, and focusing in particular on the textual content of these educational material, and through the means of artificial intelligence, make these educational material reusable by other educational designer to design novel content, novel educational content. What we have done during this 1.5 year is to collect a database of open educational resources, and analyzing these educational resources to connect and extract from these the green, digital, and entrepreneurial skills contained in them, in order to have a first map that is usable for educators to understand if they want to focus on some particular skills, where they can find open educational resources related to that. All this information is collected in an enabler that is a tool that now we are at the first round of internal revision, and in the next months we will have also some external testing of the tool. So stay tuned, and if you want to reach out on that, please do that. In this tool, what we do is not just collecting all the OER, but also giving tools that, thanks to the use of generative AI, enable the educational designer to list the learning outcomes they want to reach connected to the skill, identify the best way for assessing the learning process related to specific OER, again, using AI technology. ENCORE will become a platform where we want to collect data about how educators use OER, and about how educators are using AI and generative AI in particular for supporting the design, the educational design. So I think it will also be a strong tool for researchers interested in this topic. So this is ENCORE in a nutshell. You can find our website in the chat. I'm posting it, and I leave again the floor to Alessandra for introducing our speakers of today.
Filippo, as you know, sometimes I read your mind, so the link is already there in the chat. For people that didn't notice, that there is the link and our hashtag for find our news on social media. I give the floor to the speaker, and I will start with the lady first. So you can now introduce yourself and just give some information about you, your research. And I want to clarify to the audience that is here that today we are gonna have like a dynamic discussion. So any question is a good question, of course, related to the topic of generative AI in education. So don't be shy to turn on the mic and talk, because that's the point of this meeting. We want to, or this event, to really create some enhancing a useful discussion on it. Please, Bhumika.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Bhumika, and I'm one of the speakers. I'm a PhD student, candidate. I don't know what is the exact term used at different places, but I'm doing my PhD on ethics of AI for education. So I'm trying to examine all of the ethical aspects around the usage of AI in education and create a framework that can help different stakeholders decide which AI to use and how to use it. So I'm now halfway through, and to be very honest, I have no clue where this framework is going to go or what shape it's going to take, because at the pace at which AI is evolving right now, it's a catch up. I feel like my PhD is just trying to catch up. And I think that's all of the field of ethics right now. It's just an arms race and trying to catch up with a really, really rapid pace of AI evolution. And yeah, that's about my PhD. And I'm from India. I moved to the Netherlands for my master's and my PhD, as Alessandra mentioned, quite unfortunately. But here I am.
For the weather people, we love the Netherlands.
So I can tolerate it. I don't love it, but it's okay. That's yeah. And besides that, in my free time, I like doing a lot of reading, sports, origami, a lot of other creative things. So that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, thank you, Bhumika. And it's not only because of AI that your PhD at some point. So I never heard a PhD candidate student. I also never know what to say, that have a smooth track. So I don't know if I said it to you, but Bo has heard that from me many times. A PhD is painful. I didn't find anybody enjoying unless you're kind of a masochist, probably. But that is another topic. We can have another event on that. And I see in my screen, so I go with order of screen, Manuel. So I give the floor to you for a short introduction, and maybe you can tell us also more about the research interests that you have, and then the people can understand. So we have Bhumika, that's pretty much on the ethical development of generative AI in education, and then Manuel, please.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for inviting me to this event. My name is Manuel Ninaus. I'm currently a tenure-track professor or assistant professor at the University of Graz in Austria, where I'm currently heading the digital psychology lab. And in our lab, we mostly focus on the development, evaluation, and very in-depth evaluation of learning technologies, with a particular emphasis on game-based learning, educational technologies in general, though. We use simulations, gamified approaches, and focus a lot on the motivation and the emotions during the learning processes. And therefore, we utilize a range of different kinds of subjective but also objective measures, learning analytics, multimodal learning analytics. We really want to better understand the learning process in itself. And of course, the new developments in AI, specifically generative AI, provide a huge shift for education, which we're trying to also, follow up with and, be part of this arms race, I would say. And we're doing this mostly also because of my background from a psychological perspective, but also from a neuroscientific perspective. I hope that sums it up quite shortly. Yeah.
It does, and thank you. It's super interesting from my point of view. And we have some colleague. I see Antonio is exactly close to you in my screen. We do a lot of gamified approaches as well in the project, so maybe we can talk about that later, which is also another topic. You see how many collateral topics we are finding. I leave the floor to Gualtiero. Sorry to leave you the last, but you know, you sparkle everybody now. Go ahead.
Yeah, the older guy. But I'm not the older here in the presentation because Yuri is as old as I am. So, well, I am a mechanical engineer. So if you need to fix something, I'm here for you. In general, this period I like not to teach people, but to teach a machine, because machine learning is a good tool, but teaching machine, it is not so easy. So the trick and the research activity I'm doing now is mainly focusing on text and images and generative AI, and on how to teach them without losing time, losing resources, and so on. So whatever could be a trick for me is okay, and doesn't matter if it is well executed or not. The important stuff is reducing the resources and using as higher intelligence as we can. That's it.
Many thanks, Gualtiero. And what you just said, I have a question in my head immediately. And I love this because I love not to prepare. So you just said that any trick, sometimes my brain is the trick in things, which I'm really grateful about it. So we have a psychologist background person. We have a person that is looking at the generate AI from the ethical approach, and as different stakeholders that keep in mind, among them student. And you just mentioned, I don't care if a student does it right, important that we reach the point. I have a question. Any one of you can take it, also the audience, I like that. How will because generative AI is pretty much, and I'm thinking about LLM, ChatGPT, for instance, is very famous, and they many times compare this tool to the calculator, and the people, specifically I'm thinking student, but also teacher, so generally users, but let's consider the student. Just take bluntly what the generative AI produces, and then submit essay, or just take that result as for granted right. Like sometimes we were doing with the calculator without checking, I did a sum, but the result is actually less, a lower number than the one I've inputted, so should be wrong, but we don't care. We just are in the mood of get it done, it doesn't matter. What can you say about it? So can generative AI really make us more dumb than we are, or will we learn something with it? Everybody can...
With this, because I had a very similar discussion last week with a colleague. So there are two aspects to this. One, when you ask a calculator about a question, because it's been programmed with the technology and it's been programmed with strict rules, it will give you the right answer. So the reliability of a calculator is at this moment quite higher than a generative AI. That's one aspect that needs to be considered. But the second aspect is the skills learning. So a lot of us in school, we did not use calculators because we needed to learn basic math. We needed to learn 2 + 2 is 4 before we started relying on calculators. And I think it's something similar even with writing skills. It is a skill that needs to be developed. And if we give, so maybe at school level, we need to develop that skill first before having a complete reliance on the tools. So once the students have good writing skills developed, then it's okay to use the tool to maybe outsource it, but it is necessary to develop the skill.
So in principle, you're saying don't use a generative AI because you will not learn how to compile a text. Once you learn it, maybe go for it. And I'm being provocative, I know that. I saw that Manuel turn on the microphone, so probably wanted to say something, or yeah, go.
Well, well, I mean, it's an important point that we need to discuss generally in education. Like, which skills do we think are still, let's say, essential in the future? So I think what we're currently seeing is that, well, we all see, well, you know, ChatGPT or some other LLMs like to hallucinate or something, but actually we only know that these tools are hallucinating if we already have the expertise in this particular domain that we're actually interacting with this tool. So if we don't have the expertise, we really can't judge whether what we have in front of us is maybe not correct or incorrect. So if we don't have the expertise, it's easy to just like over rely and maybe also then lose the actual expertise that we need to use these kinds of tools. So we first need to build up the expertise. And this is the tricky thing of it, because currently it is so easy to outsource certain tasks. So the opportunity costs are so low. And this is, I think, the critical point that we need to discuss on the one hand. On the other hand, it is a question of what is really still an essential skill, which I can't answer. I think nobody can answer this currently. But if we think of, like you mentioned the example, Alessandra, with the calculator, similar things can be said about statistics. You know, before we had digital computers, we had to manually integrate the normal curve and the p-values. And this defined our statistical expertise to be proficient in using statistics and be an expert on statistics. But nowadays, we don't need to do that manually anymore. And still, we can be considered experts, for instance, in statistics, even though maybe we outsource this part of the statistics to a computer. So I think we need to talk about a little bit about this, how generative AI shapes the necessity for certain essential skills.
Well, Thierry, do you want to add something, or anybody else in the audience?
Well,
add something. There is also Christina. I want to say something. You decide who. I want to be in the middle here. Come on, Christina, you go.
Okay. This exact point concerns me the last few years a lot. I really wonder what, especially university, what's the role here? And I truly believe that there are some essential skills that students have to gain before come in touch with tools like generative AI or whatever. I come from my research area was in the past about the automated vehicles. I have a lot of research in that part. And I do believe that the skills that we do not cultivate leave us. So I do believe that by allowing vehicles to drive, we may become worse drivers. And when the time comes to take the lead, we will not be very good in that. So my personal view up to this point is that we need to teach our students how to think. And when they learn that, then they can use tools because they will be able to judge what they get. For example, I'm better when I program something. I'm better than young students because I know what is behind that. And if I have a problem, I know how to think and solve it. And that's the point. When we leave behind our essential skills, then when we face problems, we find it difficult to overcome them. That's the one. And the other thing is that those people that brought us these wonderful tools that make our lives very easy, they had these essential skills, and based on them, they created this that help us now, but it helps me because I also have this essential skill that makes me use it in the right way. I don't take everything I'm told and use it. I can judge it, I can change it, I can enhance it. That's my point of view. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can contribute, my perspective is related to sugar, because our brain doesn't want to lose sugar, and that's the reason why we are lazy. And the tool that it is easy make us even more lazy. So we could opt for saving sugar and looking at ChatGPT or other tools that makes the job for us. Yeah, we cannot prevent students to do that, so we have to change a little bit the perspective and do not award them with good marks if they not provide something that is original. And that's a completely different perspective on how we educate people. But yeah, it implies hard work.
Might I add a follow-up question to this? Because you mentioned now original. So what is your perspective on originality or creativity in context of generative AI? Or is there, I mean, I recently had this discussion with another colleague, like, is it possible that generative AI creates something creative, new, innovative, original? I mean, it depends a little bit on the definition, but I just would be interested in your take on it.
Well, original is weak signals are connection never exploited before, is something that is not written in a manual. That's original. The other are things that a generative AI can easily do. Weak signals are very difficult for generative AI because statistics overcome weak signals. And we can measure in some way the level of innovation. Continuous innovation is something that generative tools can do, but radical innovation is far more behind. And moreover, at the present moment, but I don't know how long it will take for overcoming also this issue, is mixing, for example, images and text. That could be the real shift in the future. If the tool will join the two perspectives as human beings are able to do, it could be a good trick. Moreover, I suppose that nowadays we are not using the superpower we have, that is finding similarity where similarity are not. So we are very good in spotting similarity. Actually, one of the trick that the game we were playing when we were young is spotting the difference, because our eyes are more prone to find similarity than not spotting differences. So yeah, we should use this superpower we have. I don't know if I shed some light.
Yeah, thanks, Gualtiero. Thanks to all for these interesting insights. I would like to connect to these because clearly, from a, let's say, short time, nowadays we use it. Students are using it. We find value in using it. So from a short-term perspective, is clear. Then the impact is also being somehow positive. What is clear is also that there can be some more medium long-term problems. Some of them has already emerged in terms of decreasing of writing skills, and who knows what kind of skills will decrease in the future thanks to ChatGPT in that sense. I would like to ask Bhumika, that works on this topic, if she can share with us some reflection on the ethical issues that are emerging from the literature in this sense. In the last year, there were a lot of papers published about impact of generative AI in education. Many of them arises critics. And if there is something that isn't on the table that we didn't discuss yet, I think so. So Bhumika, if you can tell us something about this.
Yeah. So I think some of the issues that we still haven't talked about at all is one is the discrimination that can be caused by generative AI, because it is essentially, it learns what the data tells it, and the historical data is often biased. It can be biased in terms of gender, race, skills. For example, there have been cases of the detectors flagging people who don't have high language proficiency as definitely ChatGPT written. And a lot of these cases of false flagging have happened in the past, also still going on. So discrimination is quite an important factor to consider, in my opinion. And another very important factor is the environmental impact and the society, because the amount of power required to train these systems. I was recently reading a paper that talks about the amount of power required to train a large language model is the amount of power required to power a large city like Amsterdam. And this is one round of training. And in the last 6 months, probably there have been at least 2 to 3 different versions of ChatGPT, for example. And then if you think about it in terms of the scale of the power required, in terms of the environmental impact, it's quite, yeah, it really makes you think, should I be using these? And should I be using them for tasks that are not absolutely necessary for me? So there's a lot in terms of discrimination power, but also in terms of human autonomy and explicability. We don't always know if and why the output is what it is. So these are some of the ethical aspects that I think are very important to discuss and to consider.
Thanks, Bhumika. You clarified also the discourse that has been very active in the scientific community in the last year. But I think, and this is again, it's a question also to Gualtieri and Manuel, that there is a point that is still out of the table, that is the uncertainty, in the sense that when we were talking about, we see many times making comparisons by technological optimists like I am on previous technologies that has impacted the way we work and we learn. So calculators, Excel, whatever. There is a couple of differences between ChatGPT and these tools. First of all, general purposeness. So this tool does a lot of different things, and I see that both we as expert, but also even more people that is not expert, put all of these things that ChatGPT can do in one box, and we judge all in the same way, which is not. Because when we are talking about trust, if I ask ChatGPT to write a poem, I don't need to trust the output, right? It's a poem, it's art, let's say. While if I'm asking on fact, then okay, there is a trustfulness. Then we don't really know how it works. While we know for the calculator or for Excel, we can know. We don't know, but we can if we want, right? And it changes, so it evolves. Every week, we see that the skills changes. This is a problem. This is an educational problem. This is the one that I'm facing. So this uncertainty create big issues. I want to know if you are and how managing these, both for research, but also in the class, and if you have any thoughts about that. Manuel, Gualtiero, Bhumika.
So in terms of research, I'm still figuring out what to do because I wrote a literature review about a year ago, and since then a lot of tools have been introduced that change the whole landscape. So in terms of research, I honestly don't know what to do. But in terms of the classroom, I think it's just about having a continuous dialogue with the students about what is possible and what isn't possible, and making them aware that this might be a drawback because a lot of students are very, very excited about using the tools, but they don't know about, for example, false citation. And because they don't know about it, they might not check it. And as far as I know, I think ChatGPT, the latest version, takes care of it to some extent. But again, it's not, you have to pay for it. The free version doesn't do that. So I think the most important thing for students is making them aware. And yeah, about your comparison with previous technologies, it just kind of popped in my head now that 5 years ago, there was a blockchain wave, and it was huge. Blockchain was trying to be integrated in everything. And a lot of people didn't know what it was, what they were doing with it, but it was kind of the buzz term everywhere. And I feel like, and over time, it kind of settled down and people figured out what it's good for and what it isn't good for. And I think with generative AI, we are now at the peak of that wave where everyone's excited and wants to use it for everything possible. But I think in the next 2-3 years, 5 years, we will kind of have ridden the top of the wave and we will have settled into, okay, this is it, this is what it's good for, and this is what it isn't good for. So from a technology perspective, I think it'll take a year or two, but we will figure out that this is the right usage for it and this isn't, and maybe everyone won't be talking about it, but at least we'll know, have some sort of guidelines of how to use it.
I don't know if Gualtiero has the microphone on because want to talk or just has the microphone on. Otherwise, I have something that I could say.
You could start.
Okay, so thank you. It's a really good point, Bhumika, and many institutions, as you know, I don't know if I said it before, we work for the European Association of Distance Teaching Universities. So in our sector, institutions are moving towards the creation of guidelines for all the stakeholders involved at institutional level university. And there are people that are in the wave of, oh no, let's ban all, it's so bad. And other that are like, okay, make them use moderately. And you know, I mean, I don't have to be an expert to know that the extreme is always bad. So it's better that you do a middle thingy. But it's not this that I wanted to point out. But while you were talking, you, Bhumika, before Filippo, I was thinking how students, because I mean, people are in online university, the population is a bit older generally, but the student that generally, probably Manuel Gualtiero or other colleagues here in traditional university deal with are around the teens. So they are adult, but young adult. And I see, I had like a lot of discussion before about the use of internet and how teenager or young adult treat internet. So it's like is a friend. And I see that it's coming more or less the same with ChatGPT, or let's talk of Siri or whatever you use in your telephone. They start to talk to the generative AI or to the chat, and they kind of personalize that inanimated thingy. You know, they don't really see that there is a limit, and is actually what the answers are coming are not really thought. There is no little human that is giving you the suggestion, or you cannot really use that that tool as a confident, you know, like somebody to give you a solution for a problem. But it's happening. I don't know if you have dealt with this with your student, sometimes also teacher probably. Do you research this stuff? Probably Manuel.
Maybe first Gualtiero, if he wants to say something.
No, I think he's
Just
thinking.
like keep some order here. But
I think he was thinking about
okay.
You can start. For me, it's okay.
I don't mind. I think Bhumika already made some nice points in terms of the waves. I mean, we all know this from the Gartner hype cycle, right? I mean, it's happening with every technology. VR was the savior of education. AR was the savior of education. I think the difference with generative AI, or at least ChatGPT or other easily accessible AI models, is that they have a very, very, very low opportunity costs. So similar as with Google, yes, it's very easy to access it, and that's why it's easy to outsource tasks and easy for everyone to access those kinds of things. And as Alessandra now mentioned, also that sometimes the students are not aware about data privacy issues. I mean, you did not specifically talk about that, but it is more or less an issue if you deal with the internet or with social media as a friend. Effectively, it's free, and effectively nothing is free. So you give something in return. You provide data to the companies, and that's why most of the solutions, or many of the solutions, of course, are free. And I think this is some of the issues that students are sometimes not aware, especially when they're interacting with ChatGPT, especially how much information they provide to ChatGPT and what this information can be, maybe. But another thing, and I think this is also very crucial, as Alessandra said, once there is at the other side of the screen an avatar, or a more, let's say, anthropomorphized entity, it's also more likely that the human perceives this interaction with this anthropomorphized entity as a relationship, and develops a parasocial relationship, as we call it. And this is, of course, something that needs to be observed. And we know also from previous studies in education, not specifically only for AI, that students usually trust algorithms more than they trust humans. Because they think, this also addresses a little bit what Bhumika already mentioned, they think that they are neutral and objective, but they aren't, of course, because they are not, or the algorithms behind them, because the data that were fed into are not neutral and bias-free. So this is all very complicated topics that need to be considered, and especially if you're starting to build up then a relationship, a parasocial relationship with an artificial entity. It gets even more complicated, because then trust, of course, plays a huge role, and over-reliance, over-trust in those parasocial entities.
Thanks, Manuel. I have a question for Gualtiero, then a provocative one. Do you trust ChatGPT, and why you trust it?
Well, the fact is that I don't need to trust, because it is a tool. It is a different tool, and in case of education, my only guess is understanding what to teach next, thanks to ChatGPT. if I have to explain basic stuff that I consider very basic, my goal is not teaching them anymore and leaving to ChatGPT and having the time for not teaching this stuff to teach something more. So if the result is not true, that's not my business. My business is teaching how to detect. And that's my only goal. I would like to thank OpenAI for having provided a tool that makes my student fail even more than before, and having the chance to go back to the past and asking them for being more accurate, for finding another way to solve the problem that ChatGPT solved in very good way, to take time to think about instead of try to find the solution. My shift now is asking them what is the problem, not what is the solution. So completely reverse. That was my problem last year. So I had to redesign completely my course, and you were part of my co-teacher. But we started teaching ChatGPT from day one. And all the course was a challenge for us because we have to throw out all the material we had prepared the year before to teach the
Gualtiero have blocked, but I can finish, I think, for him to teach the way, Gualtiero, you blocked that to teach and then you block it. So if you can repeat.
To teach the way of thinking with ChatGPT. And being slow, pay attention are two characteristics that we lost during the last year, and we have to teach them again. So going counterintuitive in some ways, going creatively or in an original way, is also what, in my opinion, teacher should do.
So this also brings me, the points that you brought up, also brings me to the point that, wait, I'm just looking at the name, Eric raised in the chat about critical life skills and critical thinking skills. People have maybe lately not felt the need to develop it because ChatGPT has all the answers, to use this quote. And these are still skills that we do need to develop for a holistic development of students, of a personality as teachers. But because of the over-reliance on these tools, we should not compromise on our development of these skills. It's good to use the tools after we have developed the skills. So I think that's indeed good to use ChatGPT and redesign education, but before that, we have to think about what is the problem and how to redesign things to work with the problem.
Yeah, I really believe we could use, I mean, we have to be careful. And I think that's what our mamas has taught us, right? Be always careful, don't be extreme. Then, of course, we are extreme sometimes, but with ChatGPT or generative AI in general, of course, take it that is more or less what you said before, you know? So if you don't know how to write, if you don't know how to do a sum, you cannot figure it out if ChatGPT, calculator, or whatever tool is telling you the truth or not. And at the same time, because the tool is biased, because the tool is not always right, you could use it in the classroom as a teacher, also you to another peer student. You know, you could show that there is a bias, that there is a problem there, and develop other skill. And ENCORE is all about skills. And I know that ChatGPT can be used, or generative AI, sorry, for many things. And I was wondering, Manuel, if you could give us some example in that sense. I know that you use a AI-generated tool for other things. and I'm thinking about game-based learning, but maybe it's not only the only example you want to bring on the table. Could you, develop more this concept?
Well, I mean, I already mentioned it, and we were talking about it now also for some time. I mean, it's about building up the expertise, building up the essential skills that we need. And since it is so easy to outsource tasks currently, I think the main question is how do we motivate then students to actually engage with a learning task, with a learning activity, with thinking critically about problems, as Guglielmo already said. How do we motivate them? And one crucial part is for expertise development is practice. So it's not only motivating to learn, but also to do practice stuff. And for that, the students need motivation. So this is like an established concept, how to build up expertise. There's no debate about it. You need to practice in most of the cases, deliberate practice, and we need to motivate students. One among many different approaches might be, of course, to consider game-based learning, because we know from research that game-based learning is quite successful through all age grades, through all educational levels. It is quite effective. And why is it effective? Because if you design a learning experience, it doesn't need even to be game-based learning, but typically game-based learning solutions are kind of easily conceptualized on the 3 levels of human needs for motivation, which is conceptualized by the self-determination theory, where we think about which kinds of needs need to be satisfied so that we experience intrinsic motivation and therefore enjoyment with a task. And those three needs is the need for competence, which is mostly about giving feedback, the need for autonomy, so being able to make autonomous decision and has some impact on something. And last, relatedness, which is more like a social component, but in context of virtually mediated environments or being a game environment, it can also be something parasocial. It doesn't need to be a human-to-human relatedness aspect. And games can be designed in a way, if they are well designed. I'm not saying that all games or gamified approaches are the solution to these problems, but if you do it well, I think they can address at least a little bit the aspect that we need to motivate students to practice their skills, to build up expertise, so that they become responsible users of generative AI.
Anybody want to comment on that? Was super interesting, by the way.
So I was curious if you have worked on any games that act on educating about how to use generative AI, if your research lab has done something with it or anyone has done something with it.
Not yet. I know there is a project, an Erasmus Plus project, I think headed by University of Malta with Georgios Yanakakis, and they developed. I can't remember the title of the Erasmus project, but they developed a game to teach students about machine learning, school students about machine learning. So different kinds of, I don't remember the exact details, was it supervised or unsupervised machine learning algorithms, but they picked some algorithms and made a game out of it. And one of the key features, at least that I remember, was that it was very easy to understand that whatever you put in as a training data set heavily affects your outcomes. And I think this is something that students could learn quite well. And of course, it also is related to generative AI.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah, what we are doing for being counterintuitive, so attract people, is teaching how to prompt in a piece of paper. So they cannot use ChatGPT for prompting. So being disconnected help them in taking time. Doing it physically makes the activity slower. They can cancel, but maintain the text they wrote, so they can elaborate a little bit. So they have, let me say, 5 minutes to formally describe the problem, as Antonio Bucchiarone was describing in the chat. Very good comment, Antonio. And they practice that prompting single shot is the key for interacting with ChatGPT. So having solved the problem of prompting in a formal way and having it written down in the proper way helps you in also thinking about the output you want to see and to double check. So you are more.
Is again. So Gualtiero must have some problem. Filippo, can you read?
Is the University of Pisa connection. But Gualtiero raised a point about Antonio's message, which I was reading too, and it's very interesting. Anto, do you want to say something about the message you just write? Because I think the vision is quite interesting.
Yeah, yes, Filippo, thanks a lot. So this is this vision started some weeks ago when I started a course on prompt engineering with my students, and I started the course to understand how they are using ChatGPT today. Simply asking them to generate prompts and see the results and so on. And I discovered that they started to ask ChatGPT the complete task to do, like generate a complete chapter of my thesis with this input and these outputs, okay? But without to understand concretely what is an input, what is an output, what is an objective, what is the context of your thesis, and try to think about how to decompose this complete task in smaller tasks and do the final job in an incremental way, no? Because in the backend there is a very strong intelligence, and they are not using in a good way, in my opinion. And after this experience, I started with a second lecture with introducing a formal card, so like a game, okay? So they started to define cards, and the card for me is a simple and atomic task to interact with GPT, asking specific and concrete outcomes, and try to compose them in an incremental way or defining a flow, okay? As how OpenAI is doing now with flows, okay? And decomposing the big problem in smaller problems was a success in the sense that they discovered that the final effect, decomposing the problem in smaller problem, was better than asking the complete problem from the starting point. And so this is formalism. So we need to help them to understand what is an interaction with these intelligent components. And we need to formalize in a clear way what we can do and what we cannot do, and characterize this interaction, putting also other features like ethical aspects, creativity, precondition and effects of single interactions. So if we formalize this and explain to the student, probably we reach more power in using these tools in different domains, not only in education, but also in companies, for example. No? This is what I have in my mind, but of course, we will see with more experiments in the future. No?
Thanks, Antonio. There is Manuel with the raised hand. Please, Manuel.
Yes, thank you so much. I think very interesting points made by Antonio. Like 2 points that I want to address here. One where I really would be interested in your opinion about that, because you said you teach students prompt engineering, or you work part of it with prompt engineering. So I was wondering, I mean, with then in context of ChatGPT, new GPTs are coming out that are dedicated to certain tasks. Like, don't we even then take away the necessity to be good prompt engineers, because the GPTs might become more and more specific, so that I just need to choose which kind of GPT I need to use. So I think this is something that is interesting in this aspect. And another thing that you mentioned that made me curious and is also quite in line with my own opinion, maybe from a different line of perspective, but I think what we need to do is in education, and specifically in educational assessment, is to focus more on the process rather than the end product. Because the end product can be so easily created right now that it is not worth it anymore. And we see that also in higher education, that some university give up bachelor thesis as a tool to assess students. And so I think focusing, and then, as you said, Antonio, like on the processes, I think is super interesting in context of prompt engineering as well. But also generally, I think we need to focus more on the processes how students come maybe to a solution, or how students identify problems as we discussed earlier.
Yeah, very, very interesting, Manuel. So in my opinion, I agree with you that Microsoft or other companies are going in this direction to provide atomic services, okay? But the point is that the contextualization of these services must be done by the students. So you have a service, you give an input and you have an output, okay? But the output can change from input to another input, and the context is very important. So we need to explain the students what are the main ingredients and how these different variables can change the values, okay, and how the outcome will reflect these changes. Here the creativity of the student could be massive creativity, and we should work on this. You can imagine if we create let me say a repository of cards, okay, created by students, and we implement algorithms to compose them in automatic way, so you can have thousands and thousands of compositions. I would like to stress this fact in this context, and prompt engineering could become a job in some way, so how to characterize better these cards in order to have the best solution at the end in terms of impact, not only the text that you produce, but calculate also metrics on top of the output, and receive feedbacks from these metrics evaluation. So we can create very, very complex systems on top, in my opinion.
Thanks, Antonio. There is Bhumika with the raised hand.
Yeah, so I partly know the answer to this question, and I also understand your view about prompt engineering and establishing the context. But I sometimes like to play the devil's advocate just for the fun of it. So this is a question from the student perspective that I've also heard students ask me, that the initial promise of these chatbots and LLMs was that they would be able to talk to a machine in natural language, and they should be able to ask it a normal question, and it should be able to do something somewhere and give it an answer. But then when we come down to prompt engineering, it's a bit, again, trying to learn a new skill to interact with this AI that was marketed as a really low threshold AI. So this is just a question to everyone. How do you feel about having to learn prompt engineering or other skills to interact with a system which was promised to be low threshold? Or
Bhumika, if you don't mind, I take this one because it's a super interesting question and very much connected to what Antonio has said. And these are in line with the reflections that me, Antonio, and the rest of the partnership are also doing in ENCORE. first point, I think that prompt engineering is a fake skill, like it's a marketing thing that we are using to sell, like we are doing a lot. And the real skill maybe that is behind, and this is also connected to what Antonio said, is problem framing. So you have a big problem and you should be able to frame it up, to split it up in subparts. If you are able to do that, then now exists a tool that make it possible to explain this small problem in natural language. So then you don't need to code like before, but you can express this problem in natural language. So you don't have to learn the language of coding, but you can use the language that you use every day. But in that sense, prompt engineering is a problem for me. Hadak, please. Ahad, please.
I think he left.
He left. Okay.
No, the mic was on for.
Okay. Manuel, please add. We cannot hear you, Manuel. I don't know why.
Sorry.
Now yes.
I also used the button. Sorry. So I think super interesting what you said, and it reminds me a little bit about the discussions that we sometimes had that students don't even know sometimes how to Google, and how to use something like that, and how actually we need to teach them how to do literature search, because they don't know even like to put together two Boolean arguments, and this is like this same thing. And on the other side of things that I find quite interesting and funny almost, if we think about systems like Alexa and other voice AI programs, where we supposed to interact with natural language, but we know that they sometimes don't understand, and so we just say weather today. And we don't ask really, because we learn how to interact with those tools a little bit, but it's just a funny side note on this part. But like, yeah,
there is something more for sure.
Yeah,
and it will be interesting to see if interesting research comes on that. But I think we touched a super cool point. Okay, so it's 7:11. We still have some time, so. I see also Serge has arrived. Hi, Serge. I leave the floor for some questions from the audience. Alessandra, what do you think? We can, if there is any questions, please.
People would turn on the camera and be more there instead of, I don't know. I have the feeling when you have the camera off, maybe.
Yeah, you are more passive.
Or you are just there. Why did you connect? Come on, people, be there. Would be nice if somebody will make some question for our experts. Maybe a curiosity, maybe, are you using ChatGPT? Do you think it's worth it? Is not? Can you prompt? Do you know what is a prompt? I found myself sometime discussing a funny thing with my colleagues. So when I prompt, I use ChatGPT. I mean, I do. Also because I have dyslexia. So for me, it's very more comforting that a test is checked by ChatGPT, but still, Manuel, I managed to do mistake with your surname. Sorry for that. So you see, it's not to be trusted completely. So it doesn't spot that you wrote Nin Naus or Nin Was as I did. So that is an example, but it does help me in my job. And I see Massimo with the hands up, but no camera on. So I leave the floor to Massimo, then I continue my elaboration later. Go, Massimo.
Yes. Well, I wanted to turn my camera, but it's disabled right now. So.
No worries, I'm just teasing you. Please go ahead. We hear you perfectly.
Yeah, and yeah, well, it's disabled by the host. I mean, but yeah.
How did you do it? How is it possible?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Now.
I'm asking to.
There you go.
Okay.
Yes, and well, it's more like a general reflection that I have, and it's well, the question I would say it's really that well, it's maybe a controversial comment, but it's more to, I mean, there is the tendency now to assume that future teaching will be very based on conversations and very based on text or some kind of form of interaction. But there are still many educations that do not actually require that or are almost not relevant or not needed so much. So, for example, mechanical engineering, and Gualtier, I guess, can support me on this. There are some skills that are really non-conversational or non-interactional, so to say. And the question is really how can we use AI or conversational tools then integrate for teaching non-conversational or non-interactive. So it's really an open question. I don't know who wants to make a comment or if one has an idea.
Well, I agree with you. However, many of the tasks we ask to transform it into text as well. For sure, we will see a dramatic shift when images and text will be together in a seamless way. And drawings could be part of the discussion with the generative AI behind. In this case, actually, we are working on making the two interacting properly together. It is not easy, and I cannot imagine to see them in 1 year time, maybe in 2. But the system is can play a role even today. So why not? I try to do that just for being sure. I'm preparing exercises that ChatGPT cannot solve. It is another way for using ChatGPT. When it fails, the exercise is good. So I can give the exercise to my student in, for example, manufacturing a workpiece. And yeah, I can rely on the fact that the answer of ChatGPT is not perfectly accurate because I'm teaching technologies that are not so well known. So easy for me. And but I think that in a few years we will see something that could also dramatically improve the ability of a student to understand. That is my point. For example, for mechanical engineers, some exams are very tough. For example, how to draw mechanical parts is very demanding. So there are tricks also in this case to learn, and if a generative AI can help, probably we can reduce the number of people that leave our courses, that are so many. 80% of our students drop.
Yeah, and also it's what also interested me a little bit is more on even hard skills like I'm thinking, well, for mechanical engineering, but it could be using really tooling machines and this kind of things. So really even more practical or hands-on. I guess that there is a potential there, but then as you were saying, it's probably the combination between text and images and videos maybe. Then so there could be the seamless integration between them, I assume.
Probably in the next step we will see.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks Massimo, thanks Gualtiero. There is Manuel and then Bhumika.
I think a really interesting point. I think it has been discussed that there is a huge impact on knowledge workers, on white collar workers instead of blue collar workers, or generally knowledge work with these new AI tools that emerged. Of course, I think this is something that needs to be addressed here, and is partly aligned what Massimo was saying. And on the other hand, I think we all were just a little bit surprised because we thought maybe that the automation comes first from somewhere else, because we already were accustomed to, this vacuum robots and car assembling robots, and thought well, no, these people are losing their jobs, you know. But now it's actually the other way around, or it seems a little bit with new tools. Of course, I'm a little bit hyperbolic here, but I mean, I think this is really critical. I think it's just a very particular skill or set of skills that the current AI models are very useful for, but for manual labor, it might not be yet. But if we think about like assembling or something like that, I mean, we have other technologies like AR, for instance, which also works quite well. So maybe these tools can be then improved with other forms of artificial intelligence, of course.
Yeah, and adding on to Manuel's point, here we are thinking only about AI that is restricted to the computer screen, but there is also a lot of multimodal AI, so a lot of sensors that collect haptic feedback, heart rate, different other inputs from different parts of the body. And I have 2 to 3 colleagues who are working on research that tries to help learn skills such as dancing or table tennis strokes or more physical skills, but they use the sensors to collect this data, compare, and then they use an AI to compare it to the actions of an expert and then give feedback to the student about these actions. So the student just uses the sensors, does these actions, gets feedback, and then they learn these skills in a more automatic way without the intervention of an expert. So I think once you go beyond the computer screen, there is a lot possible with automating hard skills per se or blue collar skills. So yeah, I think maybe with generative AI, not so much, but with other AI tools, these things are happening in the background. Maybe in a year or two, we see a breakthrough of these kind of tools as well.
May I intervene?
Please,
So the topic of white and blue collar was also one of the reflection I had. And in particular, I would like to challenge you in thinking how to rethink the entire education, knowing that the reason why schools has been created as we see now is that industries need workforce also at a white collar level. So they have to make calculation, prepare balance sheet, stuff like that, prepare orders, specification. Okay, but nowadays it's still useful. What are the real skills that we should learn? How to use a pen? Probably my way of writing is very ugly, but I don't write anymore. So it is not a skill that is useful for my job. And according to that, we should rethink according to what could be a job. Do we need to work in the future? So something thinking in 20 years perspective could make us thinking in a different way, more creatively, and maybe finding something that is not under the spotlight now. Manuel is laughing.
Yeah, because I was thinking, great that you saved this very, very difficult question until now, because I think it's like that we all are wondering, right, which skills are still necessary in the future. It's a brain breaker to me at the moment, to be honest, to really estimate that. I think we still need the expertise. I mean, like NVIDIA's CEO at some point a few days ago said that the programming language, learning programming language is no longer necessary. I mean, you know, I think there are different people with very different opinions, but I still believe at least that at some point there needs to be a human with some sort of expertise that might supervise those AI models. And so current solutions, at least in education, what I know, go, of course, a little bit towards the use of hybrid solutions, so that at any point where it's relevant to include a human in the loop, they are integrated to come up with hybrid solutions, and to not only outsource especially decisions to an AI alone, and always involve also the human aspect there. I think this is crucial. To be honest, I hope that this remains, because yes, a machine can maybe make a decision, but if we think currently, if for instance I'm wanting to enroll in a certain school or something like that, do I really want to just outsource this decision to an algorithm that I don't know actually maybe how it's working? So maybe I also want to involve an human. And of course, humans are not perfect. Humans are not objective, so they are subjective. But somehow, to me, it feels a little bit more comfortable if I know that the human with hopefully expertise, but therefore the person needs to develop this expertise firsthand, is involved in such processes. And some of those decisions might be easily outsourceable to machines. And I think this leads a little bit back that we discussed earlier about context specificity. So where are we more sure, or where do we want to be more certain about a certain decision? And where can we live with higher or lower accuracies? I always compare this, with if we think about brain-computer interfaces, and if I need to control a wheelchair with it to stop at the traffic light, I might not be satisfied with an 85% accuracy, because my life will depend on it very heavily. But maybe for some other circumstances, 85 accuracy, I'm totally fine with. And if it's an 85% accuracy from a machine, and I additionally have a teacher that also agrees with, let's say, the tendency of the machine, I already have two instances that make this decision, which makes it also maybe a little bit more valid. So having the human in the loop is important, but for that we need the expertise of the human. So maybe also, as you said, Gualtiero, we maybe need someone who looks at the spreadsheets, a human, to check whether the machine did it correctly. But there will be less persons maybe necessary for that.
So this is one side of this question, but the other side, and we as people who are working with AI know this, but on the other side, there have been a lot of instances of people trusting AI because it's posed as an expert over human judgment. So how do we deal with that kind of a conflict? This is just me playing the devil's advocate again, so feel free to go on either side of the question.
Yeah, awareness is the only way. If you make people aware of what, for example, are the risks in delegating all the reasoning to something else, is, in my opinion, enough. And the other aspect is keeping people able to spot when the system doesn't provide the proper result. But you cannot put a dream car in the hand of a young baby. The result will be not the one you want, and the car accident can happen. So yeah, many people can improve the way they, for example, communicate, the way they calculate, they make estimation, so reducing errors, but that's it. So if they are able to understand the risk they are facing with, in my opinion, it's enough. They could just raise the hand for having someone more expert to double check. Sorry, guys, I have classes. I have to go, and I want to.
Yeah, I don't know.
Thank you
No,
so
but
much.
thank you for joining. We knew you will need to leave at some point. I saw Christina. Thank you for being so patient to wait. I give the floor to Christina in a nanosecond, really very fast. And in the meanwhile, I asked to the speakers to think of a final comment. So we give Christina the floor. In the meanwhile, you think of a sentence, a phrase, a thought, something you want to communicate to us as a final thought. Can be a wrap up, can be another question. Just take the time to think while Christina elaborate her question or comment. Please, Christina, is the floor.
First, I want to thank you before you leave. It was an amazing discussion here. I just want to comment on a little bit, just that on the essential skills, I think we need to consider them a lot, what is essential and what we consider as essential. Because you know, I love all these tools. When I went to the university, we barely had computers. So I've seen the whole technology developing, and I embrace everything that comes and makes my life easier. Okay, let me start with that. But I'm pretty sure that when I learned to write, something happened to my brain. So even these things that we don't do now, I'm not writing a lot. Okay, so one could say that I don't need this skill anymore, but I'm pretty sure the learning how to write made something to my brain that if I didn't have learned, if I didn't have been taught that skill, I would be different now. So I think we need to embrace these tools, the ways that were described very nice here, teach young people how to use them correct, but we also need to identify what is really essential and keep on with that, because this may change us. If we leave it behind, we may change as persons. Thanks again a lot, really.
So I saw the comment of Gualtiero. He's not any more in the room, but for people that didn't see the chat, he says, we all are goldfishes in a transparent bowl. The view is nice, but the bowl does not help to explore the surrounding, which make me feel a lot like in the Matrix a bit. I don't know. Younger generation maybe didn't even know what the Matrix is, but I want to give the floor to the speaker of today to give a final sentence, comment, thoughts, as I asked before. Yeah, I don't want to put people on spot, so you freely open your microphone and speak, please. You can also keep a moment of silence, then we think of it. People
So,
in the meanwhile are leaving.
for me, I think the last line would be this quote that I read recently. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a measure. And I think a lot of the measures with generative AI are now becoming targets. So they're optimizing for accuracy, optimizing for a lot of things, but we're losing the view of other things such as privacy, fairness, a lot of other things, and maybe the entire context. So we should all think about what we want to measure and how we want to measure. Just a thought-provoking question.
Nice. And now, Manuel?
Yeah, very interesting approach, I think. Well, to run it up, maybe we already mentioned it. I think we just need to learn how to learn with AI, and how to maximize it for us, not for what Bhumika said, for their metrics, for their outcomes. And one of the critical issues, in my opinion, is here we need to build up the essential skills, the expertise, so that we can responsibly interact with the AI. But with the very low cost opportunities that we currently have, I think education faces a huge challenge of motivating students to actually build up the expertise.
Very true. Filippo, do you have anything to comment?
Yeah, one final thought also for my side. I think that Manuel touched the most important point, that is the motivation. And it's not the motivation of students, it's also our motivation.
Yeah.
Because I see some risk sometimes that some professor may think, okay, there is this tool now, I'm useless. Nothing is untrue more than that now. We really need a society motivated educators now more than ever. And so the stronger these tools will become, the stronger we as a community of educators, we have to discuss and understand how to manage this. And I stress for real, I stress this community word. And so not only people that does research on education, but all the people that does education also as a practice should come together. And I think that this morning we, Alessandra, were able to join different views in this community. And so I want to thank very much, not just Manuel, Bhumika, and Gualtiero, but also Cristina, Massimo, Antonio, all the people that interviewed today, and also the people that were listening, because I think that it's a moment like this that make it possible to reflect and to arrive to something that then become a better educational practice, we hope so.
Thank you, Filippo. We have discussed a lot. We, in the ENCORE project, do also more than what you have heard today. So visit our website. I have a last comment that I am thinking all the time is true. This tool is strong, can teach us things. We can use it to teach our other thing. But I am pretty sure that as human, there are things like creativity, meta thinking, or really all the artistic thing that we come up with. It's very hard that the artificial intelligence can replace. So Filippo made an example before of a poem. For sure, artificial intelligence, generative AI will come with an answer, but will be able to move you like a human poem produced one, I don't know, or write a song, will come with something, but will really able to give you the emotion that a human can. Yeah, I leave you with this thought. So I would not be so scared that they will substitute us, because humans are pretty peculiar, very amazing. So I think artificial intelligence will be there, but human also are pretty difficult to destroy. So the good one, hopefully. So I hope I'm not being too romantic for this, but you were all about artificial intelligence, so I needed to bring it more on our side, you know. Completely agree with everything that was said. I'm looking forward to our next event that most likely will happen next year. So we will, in the meanwhile, work hard as we do in the ENCORE project. So keep yourself busy with our development, following us with the hashtag OER_ENCORE. And please, if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, ask us information, do so, because as I said, we do so many things. So stay tuned. And I'm so sorry you didn't turn on the camera, people. But I hope you are there, you are listening. So we are closing the meeting, and I thank everybody that has joined. Thank you, Sanna. And the speaker of today was really great for me to be here. I really enjoyed. And also the co-host, Filippo and Bo. Thank you very much to everybody. And enjoy lunch. It's almost the lunchtime in the Netherlands. So have a nice one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.